The story I'm sharing today is about breaking the cycle of silence, realizing your worth, and stepping into your power. It's about a life-changing moment, the first time someone truly stood up for themselves. So if you've ever struggled with speaking up, this story might just inspire you to take that leap. Welcome to Short Stories with Lola. I grew up in a household where keeping the peace meant keeping quiet. My father had a strong personality. When he spoke, everyone listened. My mother, on the other hand, was the graceful, agreeable woman who taught me that being easygoing made life smoother. I watched her bite her tongue in arguments, watched her let things go for the sake of harmony. So I learned to do the same. And it became second nature to me, to avoid confrontation, to smile even when I was upset, to accept things as they were instead of pushing back. That followed me to adulthood. At work, I was known as the nice one, the reliable one, the one who would take on extra work, stay late, and never complain. And because I never said no, people kept asking for more. But that had to change. I was working on a major project, one that I had poured weeks of effort into. Late nights, early mornings, running on coffee and sheer willpower. The day before the big presentation, I was in my apartment going over my notes when my best friend and roommate, Lisa, walked in. She leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, watching me highlight my notes like my life depended on it. Then she sighed and said, "You know your boss is going to pass this presentation to one of the boys, right? And the universe knows you'll say, okay. I just wish you knew your worth and fought for what's yours." Her words hit me harder than I cared to admit, mostly because she was right. I laughed it off at the time, but later that night, as I laid in bed, staring at the ceiling, I kept replaying every time I had let things slide, every moment I had swallowed my feelings, smiled through frustration, and let someone else take what I had worked for. The next day, just minutes before the presentation was supposed to start, my boss pulled me aside. He glanced at my notes, then said casually, "I think it'll be better if Mark presents this. He has more experience speaking in these meetings." Mark, the guy who had barely contributed to the project. The guy who had spent more time scrolling through his phone than actually working. And just like that, Lisa's words rang in my head. The universe knows you'll say, okay. I opened my mouth, about to do exactly that. Agree, step aside, and let someone else take the spotlight. But no. I heard a different voice inside me, one that wasn't afraid. A rush of adrenaline surged through me. My heart pounded so hard, I could feel it in my throat. But my voice came out steady, firm, not yelling, not pleading, just unwavering. I took a deep breath, looked at my boss in the eye and said, "No, sir, that is not okay. How would you know if I had any experience speaking at meetings like this when you've never let me? And actually, I did most of the work on this project. I know it inside out. And respectfully, sir, I should be the one presenting it." The room went silent. My boss blinked at me like he couldn't believe I had just spoken to him like that. Mark looked up from his phone, surprised. Even I was a little shocked by the words that had just come out of my mouth. My whole body was buzzing. My palms were slightly sweaty and my chest was tight, but I didn't back down. I held my boss's gaze, my heart hammering as I waited for his response. Then, after what felt like forever, my boss sighed and said, "All right, you can present it." Just like that. No argument, no yelling, just a simple acknowledgement that I was right. And in that moment, something inside me clicked. I walked to the front of the room, my nerves still thrumming, But as soon as I started speaking, a new feeling took over. I had never felt more alive. The words flowed. I knew the project inside out, and for the first time, I spoke with authority, without questioning myself. As I presented, I felt light, like I was floating, weightless. By the time I finished, I was almost high on the experience, not in a chaotic, jittery way, but in the most peaceful, fulfilling way. It was like my entire body had been wrapped in a kind of euphoria. And I wondered, is this how people who smoke marijuana feel? Because this is incredible. I felt whole, complete, like I had finally stepped into the version of myself I was always meant to be. After that meeting, I walked out of that room knowing something had shifted in me forever. That day, I learned that standing up for myself wasn't about being loud or aggressive. It was about recognizing my worth and refusing to shrink myself to make others comfortable. Things didn't change overnight. I still struggled with setting boundaries and still had moments where I fell back into my old habits. But that day was the start of something new, a new version of me, one who didn't let people walk all over her. There are a lot of people who struggle with speaking up. I hope they find the courage to use their voice, just like I finally found mine. I pray they know they are allowed to take up space. They are allowed to say what they feel, and the people who truly respect them won't leave them when they do. Those people will listen. I hope this reminds you that your voice matters and that standing up for yourself isn't about being loud. It's about knowing your worth and refusing to settle for less. Thank you for watching, listening, and sharing. And until next time, take care and always choose yourself.